If you've ever been curious about the famous person called Moses described in the Bible, I have the perfect story about this individual to ease your curiosity. If you're already familiar with our series, please show your support by leaving a like. And for those who are new here, make sure to watch until the end. If this video resonates with you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos. The Israelite community settled in Egypt, and the descendants of Jacob and Joseph multiplied. Initially, the Egyptians expressed gratitude towards Joseph for saving Egypt from a major disaster, resulting in respectful treatment towards his people. However, over time, the Hebrews' lives in Egypt underwent significant changes. God blessed the descendants of Abraham with fertility, leading to a rapid growth of the Hebrew population in Egypt. As a result, the Israelites became numerous, more powerful, and influential. When a new pharaoh who had no knowledge of Joseph and Egypt's debt of gratitude towards the Israelites assumed the throne, the situation for the Hebrews took a sudden turn. The pharaoh became fearful of the growing power of the Hebrews, who were multiplying and thriving. He believed that the Israelites needed to be controlled for the sake of Egypt's stability. Consequently, the ruler decreed that the Israelites must endure forced labor. Despite the hardships, they continued to multiply, just as God had promised Abraham. The pharaoh subjected the chosen people of God to slavery, leading to embittered lives filled with strenuous and degrading tasks under the rule of Egypt. Nonetheless, even in the midst of harsh enslavement, the Israelites persevered and multiplied, remaining steadfast in fulfilling God's covenant with Abraham. The Egyptian ruler went as far as ordering the Israelite midwives to kill all Hebrew newborn boys. However, the midwives refused to comply, recognizing that such an order threatened the very existence of their people. When questioned about their refusal, they explained that Israeli women possessed exceptional strength, often giving birth before their arrival. Enraged by their defiance, the pharaoh issued a decree that all newborn boys must be thrown into the Nile, sparing only the girls. The terror among the Hebrews intensified as mothers witnessed their children being forcibly taken away. In an attempt to protect her son, a woman from the tribe of Levi sought to hide him. For 3 months she managed to evade the pharaoh's wrath, but as the child grew older, the task of concealing him became increasingly challenging. Desperate to save her son's life, she carefully placed the baby in a makeshift basket made of seagrass and set it afloat on the Nile. The mother fervently prayed to God, seeking mercy for her child's fate. As the basket drifted along the river, the baby's sister followed closely along the bank. By divine providence, the basket ended up near the riverbanks, precisely where the pharaoh's daughter was bathing. Intrigued by the sight of the basket amidst the reeds, the Egyptian princess instructed her servant to retrieve it. To her astonishment, she discovered a beautiful baby inside, unmistakably of Hebrew origin. Despite the evidence, she made the compassionate decision to adopt the child and named him Moses, signifying his deliverance from the waters. Moses grew up in the esteemed circles of Egyptian nobility, unaware of the magnificent destiny that awaited him. The princess employed an Israeli slave as a nurse to care for the baby and provide nourishment. Unbeknownst to Moses, this woman was his biological mother. As Moses matured, he became curious about the treatment of his Hebrew brethren. Witnessing the harsh conditions under which they lived, he was filled with horror. When Moses saw an Egyptian overseer brutally assaulting an Israeli slave, a surge of anger consumed him, leading him to retaliate and inadvertently causing the Egyptian's death. News of Moses' grave offense quickly spread, and the pharaoh ordered his arrest. With no other choice, Moses fled into exile, living as a wanderer. During his travels, he encountered a group of young women struggling to water their flock, as a band of shepherds prevented them from reaching the well. Moved by their plight, Moses intervened on behalf of the girls, enabling them to provide water for their animals. The girls expressed their gratitude to the Egyptian and introduced him to their father. The girls' father, who happened to be a ruler, extended an invitation to Moses to reside with their family and offered one of his daughters for marriage. Accepting the offer, the former Egyptian prince settled in the land of Midian. Together with his wife Zipporah, they welcomed the birth of their son Gershom and enjoyed a peaceful life in their new home. However, during this time, the Israelites continued to endure suffering under the oppressive rule of the Egyptians. As time passed, a new pharaoh ascended the throne, further intensifying the hardships faced by the Hebrew people. In their distress, the chosen people sought divine intervention from their Creator. God, faithful to his covenant with the Israelites, heard their cries and chose Moses as the instrument to liberate Abraham's descendants from Egyptian bondage. One day, while Moses was tending to his flock on Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, he noticed a bush engulfed in flames that did not consume the plant. Intrigued, Moses approached the burning bush and heard the voice of the Lord calling out to him. God identified himself as the God of Moses' forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and declared his purpose of answering the cries of his chosen people. Moses, initially hesitant, felt inadequate and doubted his ability to be heard. In response, God instructed Moses to cast his rod on the ground. To Moses' astonishment, the rod transformed into a serpent. God commanded Moses to grasp the serpent by its tail, and it miraculously reverted back to a rod. This miraculous sign would serve as evidence to the Israelites that God was with Moses, and that he would assist them in their liberation. God also provided other means to convince the Israelites of Moses' authenticity. Despite these assurances, Moses expressed his lack of confidence in his speaking abilities and requested that someone else be chosen. However, God reassured Moses that he would be by his side, guiding his words. God directed Moses to meet his brother Aaron, who would serve as his spokesperson. The two brothers returned to Egypt with the purpose of freeing God's chosen people. Moses, chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, returned to Egypt after his long exile in Midian. Accompanied by his brother Aaron, who was highly regarded among the Hebrews, Moses addressed the leaders of the Israelites, explaining God's plan for their liberation. To convince them, Moses demonstrated the miraculous signs that God had taught him. Witnessing these miracles, the Hebrews believed that Moses was truly God's envoy. However, convincing the Pharaoh proved to be much more challenging. Moses and Aaron confronted the Pharaoh, revealing God's will to him and commanding him to release the Israelites. But the Pharaoh, stubborn and resistant, refused to comply. In response, Moses warned the Pharaoh of the consequences if God's will was not fulfilled. Egypt would be afflicted by various plagues. However, this threat only hardened the Pharaoh's heart, leading him to intensify the suffering of the Hebrews. The Pharaoh ordered the removal of straw, which the slaves used to make bricks, while maintaining the same daily production quota. This made the work even more grueling for the Israelites. Moses, devastated to see his people suffer even more, received another command from God to confront the Pharaoh once again, accompanied by the signs that proved his divine authority. Standing before the Pharaoh, Aaron threw Moses' rod to the ground, and it transformed into a serpent. However, the Pharaoh's priests replicated the action using their occult practices, causing two rods to also become snakes. Nevertheless, Moses' serpent devoured the other two. Despite these displays of power, the Pharaoh remained unyielding, refusing to release God's people. God knew that the Pharaoh would not willingly set the Hebrew people free, so he prepared to demonstrate his strength and bend the Pharaoh's will. Thus, a series of calamities befell the kingdom, known as the 10 Plagues of Egypt.